I'm not going to say a lot about you, really, Brian. I'm a musician, I think. Definitely a singer. I've seen you sitting up here singing a bit. You used to be in a band, I think, many years ago. Probably still have a band. A businessman, charitable funder, entrepreneur, and a dear friend. Most of all, a follower of Jesus. And via the Souter Charitable Trust, a very long-term supporter of Prison Fellowship. I remember asking 3 business friends, I think in the 90s, Brian, if you would each give us 15,000 a year for a 3-year commitment. The Souter Charitable Trust never stopped. Brian's going to speak to us. Thanks, Brian.
Just goes to prove if you keep giving your money away, you'll get invited to everything, you know, it's great. Anyway, it's great to be here and to be celebrating the 40th anniversary along with you. And you know, Ken is very good for your ego, isn't he? I might take him other places to introduce me, you know, because he's very smooth. I can see why he stays on your board, you know. But actually, my involvement with prison work does go back quite a long way. And I used to be in a band called Gravel and Boulders, which is a really unimaginative name. And we used to play a lot in prisons. And I think it was partly the captive audience, you know, at least we got a group of people that had to listen to us sort of thing, you know, because we weren't great. We weren't like Jim Ritchie's band and some of the other bands, you know, we were kind of in the 2nd division or whatever, you know. Anyway, one day I was selling tickets in Glasgow in the wee office for selling bus tickets for London. And there's a great big queue of people. And this boy shouts through the back of the queue, "Hi, Brian, do you mind me?" And I'm trying to puzzle, where did I see his way? He said, "I met you when you were in Northside." And I'm going, I was only visiting, like, you know, there's a queue of folk there, you know. But you know, working with folk that are in prison, there's an openness and an honesty about them, isn't there? I just love that about them. The other thing, of course, is the incredible sense of humor that people have that are in prison. And I remember going to Perth prison, and the guy that was on before us was from the Gideons, and he had a really, I presume he's going to be with the Lord. I'm not going to offend anyone when I tell you this story, right? But because it's a while ago, but he had a really high-pitched voice, you know, and he's telling this story about something. He went on about the guy's life, and he said, and eventually his marriage ended in divorce. And everybody went, oh, you know, the prisoners went, oh, and then it went on again. He said, and eventually he ended up in prison. And somebody shouted, naughty boy, you know. But this time, we're just young guys in this band. We're hiding behind the piano, absolutely doubled up and thinking, you know, we can understand why the prisoners are finding this good entertainment. I guess if I had to choose a text for what I was going to say, and I've got 20 minutes, so I'm going to go at this at some pace, it would be 2 Corinthians 5:17. And the New Living Translation said this: "This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun." And to me, that's what Prison Fellowship is all about. It's about the power of the gospel at that greatest point of man's need. And I think that just sums up the ministry that you've had and the impact, because what we see is transformation happening before us. Now, when I used to be in this gospel band, I remember a pastor who overheard them talking about me. And one says to the other one, just look at him. He must have had a really hard life before he became a Christian. I'm thinking, you know, that I just wanted to know that this is a product of severe acne and car accidents. I actually haven't been in prison, but anyway, it's another time I was in London, and I went to this event. It was actually Julie Rudiani got a knighthood, and I was in the Z list. I was way in the corner at the back of the place, you know. And at the end of the evening, I passed, Lloyd Webber was there, and he passed this woman in front of me. And I just came behind him, and the woman turned around and she grabbed my arm. And she was an American lady, and I think she probably had a bit to drink, but she said, she's, I just have to tell you how much your music has enriched my life. And I'm thinking, no, she said, I just have to tell you how much I admire your music. You see, and I'm thinking, has she heard the band? Because, the band's been around a lot. I'm thinking, has she heard the gospel band? And then as she held my arm even tighter, she said, you'll never know how much your music has enriched my life. And I thought, no, she thinks I'm Lloyd Webber. So I just took her arm graciously and I said to her, thank you so much for sharing that. And I moved on. That was really lucky that she did that with me, because he's really not a nice person and he probably wouldn't have been very nice to him. I thought to myself afterwards, am I really that ugly? I know that I'm no picture, but Lloyd Webber, I'm thinking, because sometimes you get these reality checks in life and you think, I must be really, really ugly that she thinks I'm him. Anyway, my testimony is quite different. I was saved as a child of 10, right? And the interesting thing about that for me is that I know that Jesus has transformed my life as well. But I maybe didn't go to prison, and I've done enough things, but I haven't done all these things. But there's something about being in prison work and seeing prisoners. And I have to tell you, if you found the Lord when you were 10, the wonderful thing about being involved in prison work is that you can see just how transformative the gospel is. Now, I know that in my own life. I'd sometimes look at other people and I say, thank you, Lord, for saving me, because I know I'm capable of doing all these other things as well, right? So I know that God has transformed me. But there's something about it, isn't it, that just as a special blessing you get when you see how powerful the work of God is in transforming somebody else's life. And it's just an enormous encouragement. And I guess that's why many of you continue to be in that. Now, I'm going to do a very rapid look at Jesus' ministry. And I'm going to assume, because you're all Bible bashers, that you know all the stories that I'm going to refer to, right? And so I'm just going to go through this at actually quite some pace. I'm going to just look at Jesus' ministry and how he interacted with people in that ministry. And the first thing that comes across to me as we look at Jesus' ministry is that while he preached a sermon on the mount and everybody listened for a long time and all the rest of it, most of the New Testament is just the stories about Jesus and things that he did and people he met. It's all about people. And it strikes me the first thing that comes across is that a lot of Jesus' ministry was conversational. People that he stopped and spoke to. And that's really important, because we're never going to get the gospel across to someone unless we go into a conversation with somebody. In actual fact, Jesus' last conversation was with a thief on the cross. There's a lot of conversations recorded in the Bible. But the one I want to just share with you is the woman at the well. Because here was a woman that everybody ostracized and thought was really not accepted in her community. And Jesus Christ comes along, and you know the story. He asks her for water, and he tells her he's going to give her water that's not from the well. And then he starts to tell her about her life, that he says, bring your husband. She says, I've actually no got a husband. He said, no, that's right. You've actually had 5. And the man you're with now is not your husband. And this woman is just fascinated that this Jesus knows everything about her. And the story speaks to me about transformation, because this woman went from the well a different person from when she came to draw the water. And it tells us in the Bible that she went and she told everybody else that this man knew all about her. And it speaks to me about the omniscience of Jesus. John 4:39. He told me everything I ever did. Now, to me, that is both frightening and comforting in equal amounts. But one of the wonderful things when we're going into a prison and prison ministry is that our Jesus is omniscient, and he knows everything about that person that you're in conversation with. He knows absolutely everything about them. There's nothing that's there that's a secret. And I take comfort from that because I don't have to share some of these things, but I know that Jesus knows about them. And I can have a conversation with Jesus. And that conversation can be transformational. In prison fellowship, I've been having conversations for 40 years. And what an amazing result in the way the Lord has used these conversations that you folks have had. The second thing about Jesus' ministry is not only is it conversational, but it's interrelational. And that's because Jesus was always doing something to help somebody, to heal somebody, to feed somebody. And so in his ministry, he's doing things all the time. You know, sometimes we're really good on the conversational thing. I talk too much. It's just a reality, right? And I can talk for Scotland and the world, but there's sometimes that talking isn't enough. And sometimes we need to be interrelational. We need to go beyond the conversation, and we need to start doing things for people and helping them. My wife's better at that than I am. I'm good on the conversation, but she's better on the interrelational because she actually does something about it, right? And so it's important that we're interrelational in how we deal with people. And the person that comes to my mind in this is a wee man called Zacchaeus. And that's my favorite story because he was a wee man and he was up the tree. I mean, we've got a thing, haven't we, in modern world, all the heroes are enormous. But the truth is that Attila the Hun was only 4'10". So there you have it, right? And we men have got this kind of syndrome, haven't they, But I think that Zacchaeus was up the tree not only because he's a wee man, because he was hated by everybody. You imagine this wee man in the crowd. Well, get him now. There's that Zacchaeus. He took all that money off me last week. This is my chance to get him. So Zacchaeus put himself up the tree. You all know the story. Jesus comes along and says, I see you up there. Come down. I'm coming to your house for my tea, right? And I'm going to come and have fellowship with you. And isn't this amazing? Because what we have here is we actually have a model for evangelism. And a model for evangelism that I don't know why the church has been so reluctant to embrace, because we keep asking people, expecting people to come into our church, right? And that's not what Jesus did. He said, I'm coming to your house. I'm not asking you to come to my church. I'm coming to your house. That's how this is going to work, right? I don't know how we haven't learned this in the last couple of 100 years. We still think people are going to come into our church, but actually we need to go to their house and we need to see them in the house. And Jesus went to his house. And isn't it amazing? Because the dialogue that happened there was very dynamic indeed. And what tells us that the power of the presence of Jesus Christ in that man's home completely transformed his life. Without any compunction, without any pressure, without any persuasion, Jesus being in his home was enough to transform his life. And it tells us that he gave all his money away, and he was a completely different guy. There was complete transformation following that interrelational thing with Jesus there. And Alpha's built on that model. The idea is that we ask people to come and eat with us, and we're interrelational. And then, we start with a conversation, it becomes interrelational, and then it becomes transformational in that order. And this speaks to me about the omnipresence of Jesus. And this is the amazing thing. The power of the presence of Jesus is the greatest power in the universe. And he is everywhere. He's in that prison before you go. But when you go there, you may be the person that highlights that pathway and lights the path to find the presence of Jesus in their life. In prison fellowship, I've been interrelational for 40 years. And what an amazing result. And the final thing is sometimes, not very often, that Jesus was confrontational. Conversational, interrelational, and confrontational. Usually that confrontational was with the Pharisees or the scribes or with the authorities, It wasn't really with ordinary people often, but there were times when Jesus went into quite confrontational situations. And there was a confrontational situation that we read about in Mark 5, verses 1 to 20. And you'll all be familiar with the story about the possessed man. And this man is living in the graveyard and he's completely off his head. He's screaming. He's cutting himself. Oh, this self-harming. It's no new. It's in the Bible. It's been going on for centuries, right? We just think it's just a new generation thing. No, it's been happening for years. And this poor deranged boy, he's in there and he's going absolutely off his head. And all this is going on. And Jesus comes in. And all of a sudden, the wailing stops. And this is a man that was ostracized and isolated. Nobody wanted anything to do with him at all. It's interesting that all of these characters here, they're all dropouts. Nobody wants to do with the women because of her lifestyle. Nobody wants to do with Zacchaeus because he's stolen so much off so many people. Nobody wants to do with Legion because he's dangerous. And yet Jesus engaged with all these people. And in this case, it was confrontational because he confronted the demons and he told them to come out. And we know this story. He sent them into the pigs, and the pigs ran down the hill, and Legion was released and delivered from this. But you know, there's an interesting end to this story. I mean, I think that this story talks to me about the omnipotence of Jesus. Not only is he omniscient and knows everything about you, not only is he omnipresent and he's always there, but he's omnipotent. Because no matter what your problem is or what your demons are, Jesus is greater than them. And Jesus can deliver you. And this is the unique thing about Christian ministry. We're not asking people to follow a set of rules or even a role model. We're offering them a redeemer that can actually lift them from the pit that they're in. But it's interesting, the two reactions to this. Legion came to the boat when Jesus was sailing away. It's just at the end of the story. And he says to him, I want to come with you. Who wouldn't want to go with Jesus after what happens, right? And Jesus said, no, I don't want you to come with me. I want you to stay here in Decapolis, and I want you to tell everybody what's happened to you. But there was another group of people, and this was the kind of leadership, the people in local government, the business people, and they came to Jesus, and they said, we don't want you here. He was too hot to handle. We want you to go away from our coast. Why would you want someone with this unique power to deliver people and tell them, we don't want you here. We want you to go away. And this tells me this about this. It tells me that when Jesus comes in all his power, you will be left in one of two conditions. You will either be delivered or you will be disturbed. And that is the defining message of the gospel. The demonic man was delivered. The people that thought they were all right were disturbed. And they didn't want Jesus there. And isn't there a message in that for the church? Do we really want Christ in all his power to come and demonstrate himself? Sometimes I think we would be disturbed by it. And sometimes I think we're frightened of it. 3 stories, all with dropouts, discarded, dispossessed, disturbed people, all transformed through their relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's what prison fellowship is about. Conversational, interrelational, and confrontational, sometimes with the powers of evil. You're out there engaging with it. And praise God, you've done that for 40 years. And the Lord bless you for doing that. I'm finishing with one story now. Not so long ago, actually, I was working in Poland with a bus company there. And it was Christmas time, and I was doing the Christmas lunch or whatever, you know. And so we were trying to make small talk at the table, you know. And it's quite hard because, like in Poland, right, they eat carp for Christmas. But we wouldn't give it to our cat, you know. And they eat cabbage, enormous amounts of cabbage. So I didn't really want to talk about the Christmas lunch because I know I'm going to be almost sick listening to what they're going to eat, you know. So I'm trying to move and say, what do you do at Christmas? What is Christmas like in a Polish home? You see? So they said, well, we gather as a family around the table. And I said, well, talk me through this. They said, well, we set all the chairs out and we set an extra chair. I said, that's great. Why do you set an extra chair? They said, well, it's a tradition in Poland. We set this extra chair in case there's someone that's lonely or that's hungry or that comes to our door in need, and they get to occupy that chair. I said, that's fantastic. That is amazing, right? I said, can I ask you, Barbara? She was women maybe in their mid-40s. Barbara, when was the last time somebody sat in that chair? Oh, she said, I remember once when I was a wee girl, my granny brought somebody to that chair. And you know, it struck my heart. This is a picture of the church in Europe. We have an amazing theology. We have some great traditions. What a fantastic tradition that we have this chair for somebody and they're going to come along. And it made me think about many Christmases ago. I invited some prisoners for Christmas lunch. And I was not popular with a lot of members in our family. I have to tell you, it only ever happened once. And we used to do that. We used to often have folk that were coming up for a lease. They used to come up, we'd have lunch. We used to joke about, oh, be careful what you say now, you know. You can't talk about daylight robbery. And you can't say, oh, I could murder a pudding, you know, because you don't know, and I've maybe done time, you know. So we used to joke about it, you know. We used to joke about what you could say. Well, be careful what you say, didn't you? You know. But you know, in our family, I had to stop this because non-Christian relatives were really offended by it. And I want them to get saved as well. And so I had to stop doing it, right? But you know, that place is for that person, for the least of these that Christ talked about. Because when we invite them to that seat, we are entertaining Christ unawares. And what these dear Polish Catholic people didn't understand was this was a really important message, because Jesus was going to join them when they filled that seat. And when that seat was empty, Jesus wasn't at their table at Christmas. And that's what I leave with you, because what I love about prison fellowship is you have been filling that seat. And your reward for doing that is that Jesus is present with us when we fulfill his command and fill that seat at our table. Thank you for listening.